and the other 80% I would want to maintain my lifestyle. How that 20-60-20 rule came is 20% being saved, 60% of that income is on my essential needs, things that I absolutely need. And then the remaining 20% is really based on discretionary, because it's important to spend your life living. So it is important to be able to go out on the weekends with your girlfriends or your guy friends, or it's important to be able to go on a family vacation, or maybe it's just important if, hey, I've been eyeing that bag, that handbag down, I really want to go get it because, hey, it's in my budget, I'm capable of doing it, I don't have to swipe a credit card to get it, I've saved for it. So that's what I would recommend for those of you that are working or getting into the workforce. Follow that 80-20 rule, or that 20-60-20 rule, where, hey, 20% I'm saving off the top. And I'd recommend that you do that first. Like, you treat that saving of the 20% just like you would do any other bill that may come in. Like, some individuals say, hey, I know I have to make my mortgage payment every month. I know I have to make rent every month. I know I have to pay the car note every month. Well, just as it is important for you to make those monthly payments for car note or mortgage or rent, it's equally as important to pay yourself first. And by paying yourself first, that's why that 20% is going to come in to play. Adrienne?
Sorry, I was kicked out and I switched computers. I thought maybe that would help. So I guess that was your question about budgeting and starting to save. What can you explain a little bit about what a 401k is?
Absolutely.
And then also talk about mutual funds and stock market and what's the difference and all that.
Okay, perfect. So a 401k is an employer-sponsored retirement account. It's a retirement plan that is offered by an employer that you work for, whether you're the employee of your own company, or if you're an employee of X, Y, and Z company. So that company offers a group benefit, and part of that group benefit package is a retirement plan called a 401k. A 401k is just the internal revenue code that says this is a qualified retirement plan. Qualified meaning any dollars that go into that account, you can't touch without penalty until age 59 and a half years of age or older. So that means today, if you put money in a 401k, those dollars are going to be invested and it's going to grow tax deferred. And what I mean by tax deferred is, let's say if we put $1 in the 401k and it earned 10%, right? And so now I have the $1 plus the 10% that I earned. Well, instead of me paying Uncle Sam on the 10% that I earned this year, I'm going to defer or delay paying Uncle Sam until 59 and a half years of age or older, or whenever you were to pull the money out. So a 401k is designed to be a long-term investment strategy. It's not designed to be a short-term strategy. Short-term is typically, 2 or 3 years, within a year, within 3 years of a time horizon. But a long-term strategy is 10 plus years from now. And so a 401k is a long-term saving strategy. And when you invest in that, if you're lucky to work for an employer that matches your contribution, so even though I've put in $1 into the 401k, some employers would match my $1 at 100%. And they would say, well, Nitra, if you put in $1, then the company is going to give me $1 in addition. So now I have $2 in the 401k that's invested in earning 10, 8, 6%. Most individuals, and you guys are probably going to be part of that generation where most likely you're probably not going to, the first employer that you work with is probably not going to be your last employer. You're probably going to hop from employer to employer to employer at some point throughout your career. Most employers offer a 401k. So let's say, hey, Anitra, I'm working at the local grocery store right now while I'm in school. I know that I'm not going to be here, but does it make sense for me to still contribute to the 401k, even though I know that this is not going to be where I'm going to end my career? And I would say absolutely, it does make sense for you to do so, especially if your employer is matching your contribution, because you never want to leave money on the table. For example, if someone, I have 2 children, ages 7 and 5. If Adrian told me that, Anitra, for every dollar that you save for your son Hunter, I'm going to give you $1.50. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to put my dollar away because I want Adrian's $1.50. I'm not going to get Adrian's $1.50 unless I put up my $1. Well, that's what a 401k is with an employer match. So you never want to leave money on the table, because even though you're working at this at this job that you know it's temporary, you know you're not going to be there for your career, you can still, that money that you contributed, you can still take that with you when you leave. And what I mean by take it with you, it doesn't mean that you make a withdrawal from the 401k, because remember, you're under the age of 59 and a half, most likely. So you don't want to pay Uncle Sam more than what he's due. If you were to pull that money out when you left the local grocery and now you started working at a law firm, well, all you would need to do is roll that money from one employer's 401k plan to the law firms. And so with the money that you've contributed to the 401k, as well as your employer's contribution, if you're vested, meaning if you've worked for them long enough, they will allow you to take their contributions that they made on behalf of you into their 401k. They would allow you to take it with you and roll it over to another employer's retirement plan. Or you can work with an advisor like myself, a financial advisor, and you can roll it over into an individual retirement account, an IRA. So an IRA and
Can I ask you a question about 403? So who is matching? What corporations? Not all corporations do a matching thing, and also what is the difference between a 401k and a 403b?
Sure. So regarding the match, a match is optional. So every employer is going to be different. When you start working for an employer, or even before you agree to work with them, I would ask them for a copy of their employee handbook so that you can understand, hey, what are the policies and procedures, the values of this company, but more importantly, hey, what benefits do they offer? Because if you have multiple offers on the table, maybe you're probably going to go with an employer that provides a better 401k match or a better 403b match. So the difference between a 401k and a 403b, the best way that I can describe it is providing an example. And I like to use this example because I like different handbags. So let's say if I have an IRA, a Roth IRA, a 401k, and a 403b. I got 4 different accounts. So I got 4 different bags. I got a red bag, a blue bag, a black bag, and a purple bag. All of them are retirement assets. All of them are qualified assets, meaning the IRS, the Internal Revenue Code, states that this red bag, blue bag, black bag, and purple bag, all of them have to follow these rules. And those rules are, once you put money in there, if you touch it before the age 59 and a half, it's going to be taxable. You're going to be penalized. It's called an early withdrawal penalty of 10%. However, each of those bags, although they're all very similar, those accounts, they have different rules. For example, a 401k and a 403b, typically the maximum annual contribution to those accounts are equally the same. So for this year, you can contribute up to $19,500 into a 401k or 403b pre-tax. So as an employee, I can contribute up to $19,500 into my employer sponsors 401k or 403b, and hopefully I'm getting an employer match. Sometimes you may work for an employer that don't match, but you as the employee can still contribute. And the only difference is a 403b is designed for public institutions, typically like state providers or
Schools like us.
universities or
Yeah, we're in school.
schools.
Yeah.
Yep, or school organizations.
Mhm.
But there is no, that's the only difference between a 403b and a 401k. As it relates to the contribution limits, they're equally the same. Can contribute up to $19,500. You can't touch the money without penalty until age 59 and a half years of age or older. Both of those allow you to invest money, and the money grows tax deferred. Going back to that example that I gave, hey, if I give if I invest $1 in my 401k or 403b, and then at the end of the year I earn 10%, well, I don't have to pay Uncle Sam on that 10% this year. I can pay him later. And typically a lot of people defer it until when they're ready to make a withdrawal, and hopefully that's not before the age of 59 and a half. The other examples that I gave was the traditional IRA and a Roth IRA. Both of those are qualified retirement accounts, and they are individual retirement accounts, meaning I don't have to work for an employer to be able to contribute to that. I'm sorry, I was being interrupted by my kids. So they're individual retirement accounts. The difference between a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA is the traditional IRA contributions go into that account pre-tax, just like the money went into the 401k or the 403b pre-tax, meaning I earned $1. I didn't pay Uncle Sam taxes on that dollar. Instead, I put it into the 401k or 403b or traditional IRA, which means Uncle Sam is going to be waiting for me to make a withdrawal, because when I do, I'm going to pay him the taxes at that time, whether that's beyond age 59 and a half or before. The difference between a individual retirement account and the employer sponsored retirement account, like a 401k or 403b, is the annual contribution limits. They're drastically different. So with a 401k or 403b, does anyone remember what's the maximum contribution that we can contribute there?
I know the answer. I don't know if anybody.
19,500. But with a traditional IRA or Roth IRA, you can only contribute 6,000 a year into that account. 6,000. Now, if you're age 50 or older, you can contribute an additional 1,000 for a total of 7,000 into an IRA or a Roth IRA. Now, the difference between the traditional IRA and the Roth IRA is one goes in pre-tax. The other, the Roth IRA, you use after-tax dollars. So for example, you work for your local grocery store while you're in high school, you get paid, let's say your check is $500 for the week. We get paid $500 for the week. You paid Uncle Sam taxes. Let's say $400 got deposited into your checking account because you had to pay Uncle Sam, right? Well, now from that $400, I'm going to choose to put $100 into my Roth. Well, that $100, I've already paid Uncle Sam. So he's happy. He's not looking for me to pay him anything else. So I take that $100 that I've already paid Uncle Sam with, and I'm going to invest it in a Roth IRA. and I'm going to invest it in some mutual funds. And I'm going to grow that money from age 16 until I'm 60 years old, or 59 and a half. Well, that $100 most likely has now probably become, let's say, 500,000. Well, now you wake up several years later, you're 60 years old, or at some point beyond the age of 59 and a half. And now the contributions that you made into the Roth, it's grown to $500,000. Well, I get to take out every dollar from that account tax-free. Unlike if I had the same $500,000 in my 401k or 403b or my traditional IRA, those dollars will be taxable to me when I take it out, because I never paid Uncle Sam. It was a pre-tax contribution as opposed to a post-tax contribution.
Can you talk about why would you pick one or the other? Because I'm actually doing an after taxes right now.
Awesome.
Because I don't have kids and I don't have to work. I can put more money after taxes.
Right.
So why would one do more than the other?
Well, the reality is, I think a lot of people do it for the reasons, mainly for tax purposes. So some individuals believe that I'm in a higher tax bracket today than I'm going to be in later. Meaning I'm paying more taxes today than I'm probably going to be paying later. And so individuals say, well, since I'm paying more taxes today, let me go ahead and minimize my tax liability today by putting as much as I can into the 401k or the 403b so that I can lower my taxable income. I don't think I made that clear earlier. So let me explain this. When you make a contribution to your 401k or your IRA, since it's pre-tax, that means you're going to be able to lower the amount of taxes that you're going to pay this year. For example, if you're making $100,000 a year and I've put in $19,500 into my 401k, at the end of this year, I'm not going to pay Uncle Sam income taxes off of $100,000 of income. I'm going to pay Uncle Sam based off $100,000 minus what I've contributed to the 401k, because that was a pre-tax contribution. Therefore, I was able to get a tax deduction. So instead of paying taxes on $100,000 of income, it's going to be $100,000 minus $19,500. So I'm lowering my taxable income today, which means later, at 59 and a half years of age or older, I'm going to pay taxes on any dollar that I pull out of that account at that time. Now, some individuals feel that, well, later I'm going to be at a higher tax bracket or a lower tax bracket, and that's what helps them determine, well, do I need to put money into the 401k or should I be looking at after-tax contributions? My best advice for my clients is to have dollars going into different buckets that are impacted by taxes differently, because we're going to wake up in an environment, like right now, we're in a low tax environment, believe it or not. Does anyone, has anyone ever looked at the history of the highest marginal tax bracket in history?
Can't say that I have.
Okay, let me see if I can share my screen. Oh, okay. Can you, Adrian, can you give me the ability to share my screen?
Yeah, let me see if I can do that.
Okay. I like to show this page while we're working that out, because it really helps my clients get an understanding of what taxes were. So before I show you this, I'd like to, okay, thank you. Before I show you guys, I'd like to ask, what was the highest marginal tax bracket that anyone has ever paid in our country's history? What do you think the highest rate was?
9%?
9%?
What you're talking about, what kind of taxes are you talking
Like
about?
your marginal income tax rates.
Oh gosh, I have no idea then.
Okay. Anybody want to guess? Okay, so I'll tell you. 94%.
What?
Yes. 94% was the highest marginal tax bracket back in 1945. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
So y'all see that 1944 and 1945, that was the highest. So somebody was paying 94% in taxes in 1944, 45 and 44. Back in the year that my dad was born in 1952, somebody was paying 92% in taxes. 92%.
How do you live off that when the government's keeping all of your paycheck and you're left with a few?
Exactly. So that's the war that we're in, right? Hey, it's certainly not fair for those that are at the highest marginal tax bracket to be paying 90%. But hey, what do we do about the constituents that need assistance, right? So that's the political warfare that we're all in. But the backdrop of this though is today the highest marginal tax bracket is 39.9% right now. So call it 40%. Now, what's interesting, if we were to take a look back all the way to 1913, we can pretty much know who was in office or who wasn't in office. But we don't need to talk about that. The point that I'm trying to make is it's cyclical. It depends on what's going on in the world. Are we at war? Are we not at war? Do we have a Democrat in the office? Do we have a Republican in the office? What's going on in our world that's going to determine what impacts taxes? Now, the real question that I think everybody has is, man, this stimulus package that they just had to push out due to the pandemic, do we think taxes are going to decrease or do we think taxes are going to increase? I believe taxes are certainly not going to decrease over the years, just based off of where we are right now as an economy. And so from a planning perspective, I like to encourage my clients to think about not only where they are today, but where am I going to be or what the economy is going to look like when I'm ready to start spending my dollars. So to answer your question, Adrian, hey, what do I do? Do I put more money into an after-tax environment or do I put more money into a pre-tax environment? I think the best approach is to do a little bit of both, because depending upon what's going on in our world is really going to determine, well, do I need to, for example, if we're in a low tax environment right now, relative, right? Because all of this is relative, but considering where we are right now, 40% is certainly less than 50% or less than 94%. So if we're in a lower tax environment right now, maybe I'm going to start pulling from my taxable accounts right now because I don't have to pay as much taxes, right? Versus once taxes start to increase, maybe I'm going to stop pulling from my taxable accounts like my 401k and I'll pull from my Roth accounts or other after-tax savings alternatives like permanent life insurance or a Roth account or even municipal bonds, because all of those create access to income tax-free. Did I answer that question?
Yeah, I was just surprised of how much, I don't understand how people could live when
Yes.
your paycheck is only, 10% of what you're less. 5%.
Now keep in mind, like if you guys really take a look at the tax brackets, it's not the full $1 that I earned. The way that they have a proportion is like the first 20% of that dollar is taxed at X rate, and then the next 80% of that dollar is taxed at the highest marginal tax bracket. So it's not the full amount, but the concept, I mean, it all feels the same. The point is taxes are high in some years and income taxes are much lower in other years. So you never want to be in a position where you wake up and all of your dollars are taxable to you, because that's some of the concerns that my clients have today in this environment. Hey, Anitra, some of my clients are at the highest marginal tax bracket. Many of them are educated professionals. So a lot of them, they've climbed that corporate ladder. They're earning a significant amount of income. They're at the highest marginal tax bracket, and they're doing everything in their power to minimize how much they pay Uncle Sam today. So they're trying to max out 401ks. They're trying to max out places where they can get a deduction, a tax deduction. However, they are also mindful that, hey, I can't just think about taxes today, because if I'm feeling this way about taxes today, imagine how I'm going to feel if taxes are much higher in the future, when I'm ready to start spending those dollars, whether that's spending dollars to cover tuition for my kids' education, or whether that's spending or having access to dollars in an environment like we're in right now. It's a buyer's market, or upon retirement. So you want to have flexibility. I think it's a great idea to have dollars going into both a vehicle that will be taxable to you at the time of distribution, but also creating some tax-free dollars to you as well.
So let me ask you another question. So when you do a 40, whether it's a 401k or IRA or whatever, your money goes somewhere. So you have to give it to somebody. Yes. Or have a company. Sometimes you kind of never even talk to your company, and you just put it into a company and they put your money. But where does your money go? How do you know who to trust, and where your money is working? Because obviously, well, you could talk about, mutual funds and what that is, but where does it go, and how do you determine where to put your money?
Good question. So when you invest, so going back to those 4 bags, right, those different color bags, red, black, blue, and purple, all of them are investment accounts: 401k, 403b, traditional IRA, Roth IRA. You could say, hey, Anitra, I'm going to put money into those accounts and I want to put it in cash. It's not going to make it not a Roth IRA or not a 401k just because I have it in cash. The fact that it's a qualified retirement account, that's what defines, okay, well, what money is going into what box, what color box, red, black, purple, or blue, in those examples that I gave. But the underlying investments can be different. It could be the same. You can have money invested in your 401k equally as invested in the Roth IRA. Maybe you're invested in American funds or Fidelity funds. So let's talk about that. So the underlying funds, most people are not going to want to just put money in cash. Otherwise, they would just leave it in their savings account. So the purpose of people participating in some type of retirement plan is because they want to have those dollars invested to grow. The only way it's going to grow is if we invest it. And the goal is to make money when we invest. So the goal is to buy low and sell high. When you invest, you get to choose from individual stocks, individual bonds, or mutual funds. All of them are directly correlated with the market, meaning the equities in the market, whether that's large cap. Are you guys familiar with those different allocations, Adrian, or should I briefly go over that?
I think you should go over it.
Okay, perfect. I have a really, really good example to give, to show. Here it is. I think it's this one that I want. Oh, perfect. This is the one that I want. All right. So you have different asset classes. There are typically 9 different asset classes. When one talks about having, you guys can see my screen?
Yes.
When one talks about having a diversified portfolio, we've all heard of the concept, don't put all of your eggs in one basket, right? And everyone can agree that just means I need to spread my dollars out. I shouldn't put it all in one company. Well, that's asset diversification. I follow a model that complements that, and it's called asset allocation. Asset allocation is having multiple baskets. So not only do I have asset diversification, meaning I have multiple baskets, I mean, I didn't put all of my eggs in the same basket, but asset allocation is having multiple baskets. Asset allocation and investments is talking about these different asset classes: large cap, mid cap, small cap, international developed markets, international emerging markets, real estate, commodities, fixed income, and cash alternatives. Now, based off of your risk tolerance, let me pull that up too. Based off of your risk tolerance, that's what I use to help my clients to determine how should we invest the money. So I'm sure many of you have taken like a personality quiz before in a magazine or online. Well, your personal investor profile is very similar to those personality quizzes. It's 11 hypothetical questions that I get my clients to answer. And here's a sample of that. But based off of their scores, it puts them in a range of scores that help us to determine, well, is this person conservative, moderately conservative, balanced, aggressive, or very aggressive? Depending upon if that individual is very aggressive or conservative, that's what's going to determine how do we invest in these different asset classes, okay? So here are those asset modules. Let me see if I can get it all on the same screen. Here are those asset allocation modules. So typically, we'll go right in the middle with balanced asset allocation. Balance means 60% of the money that you've invested into your 401k or IRA is in asset classes that are impacted by equities, such as large cap, mid cap, small cap, international markets, real estate, commodities, and fixed income, okay?
Can I ask you a question on what determines a mid cap versus large cap, and how do you determine that?
Yeah. So there's a brief description right here that I'm not sure if you guys can see, but typically they're talking about the amount of gross revenue that's produced by certain companies. So a small cap company is typically consists of 600 US stocks that are equally in the same market size, liquidity, and industry group representation. So a good example of that may be, I don't know, maybe it's some of these internet platforms that we use today, like Zoom or Ring Central. Some of these companies, they're US companies, they're stock companies, but they're not as large as a Walmart or an Amazon. That makes sense?
Yeah, so Walmart, Amazon, Google are all the large cap S&P 500, right?
Yep, yes.
Okay.
So with this investor profile, if we chose a balance allocation, that only 60% is really sensitive to market volatility, because the other 40% is in fixed income. Fixed income are assets like bonds. They don't move with the market. In fact, they move opposite of the market. So when equities are doing pretty good, bonds are okay. You know, that helps preserve your principal. Equities is what grows your principal, grows those dollars. So I think this page you guys will really enjoy, because this shows us exactly what happened over the last 14 years. So from 2005 all the way to 2009, these are actual results that what the market did. Now, what's interesting though is that you see that typically, aside from a few years like 2010 and 11 and 14 and 15, there was not a consistent year where there was the same asset class that outperformed other asset classes, with the exception of those few years over the last 14 years. So the takeaway is assets, they go in and out of favor. And experts, they could kind of guesstimate what asset class they think is going to be the highest performing, but we really don't know. And so what's interesting is that even when we took a look at, even as recently as last year in 2009, the markets were booming. And my personal investment accounts, my rate of return last year was 22%.
Wow.
22%. But guess what they are this year? They're negative 28% right now. So the point is, you want to have a diversified portfolio. Notice over the last 14 years, there was never a year where the diversified portfolio was the highest performing, and it was never a year where it was the lowest performing. I like to call it, all of us are on the roller coaster ride. All of us. Adrian, do you remember Astro World and the park in Texas?
No.
Okay, so Astro World was a known park when I was growing up. And along the interstate and off of I-10, they had this huge white roller coaster ride. Like that, everybody went to that park for that ride. However, you had people like my mom, she just wanted to be on the little teacup roller coaster ride with the kids. Now, we're all on the roller coaster ride, but some of us want to be on the Batman ride at Disney World, or some of us just want to be on the teacup ride, just riding with the 2 and 3-year-olds. And that's okay. Well, what a diversified portfolio does, it gives us the best of both worlds. I want to be at the park. I want to play in the market. I want to be on the roller coaster ride, but I do not want to have a year where I'm extreme on both ends of the extreme, because typically that's when people freak out. When things typically go too up or too low, then people panic and they get out of the market. And oftentimes they get out at a market when it's the most inconvenient opportunity, because typically people start to freak out when the markets are going down. And guess what they're doing now? Now, instead of buying low and selling high, they're selling low and buying high, which is just the opposite.
Which is right now, right? Well,
which is right now.
Although the market has gone up in recent.
It has.
Yeah,
it has.
Recent. Okay.
But you're absolutely right. So a lot of what I do on a day-to-day basis is not only help people figure out how to plan for their financial future, but really, Adrian, a lot of it is coaching them from not jumping out the window when the markets do something crazy. Because then we have to remind them that, hey, we're in a diversified portfolio. We've already anticipated losses like this, which is why we wanted to have a diversified portfolio, because the definition of a diversified portfolio is I have some winners and I have some losers. And the reason why I need both is because I don't know which one is going to be the highest performing this year, and I don't know which one is going to be the lowest performing. But what I like to take a look at is risk and reward. We all know that the more risk one takes, typically the more reward that we're going to get. Well, with a diversified portfolio, notice relative to cash or bonds, which is fixed income, it's the less risk that one can take. It's the least amount of risk that one can take, but yet overall, they're still able to get a pretty competitive return of 6.45%. Versus, look at international emerging markets. International emerging markets over the last 14 years, it had a better return than the diversified portfolio. So that means, damn, if I would have had all my money in an international emerging market, I would have earned about 0.9% more in the international emerging market versus a diversified portfolio market. However, look how much more risk you would have had to take if you had invested all of your money in international emerging market versus a diversified portfolio. And that's what most people don't get. They're like, hey, Nitra, I think the biggest thing is often reminding my clients is that I don't chase returns. This isn't about investing in one thing and hopping out of it to go do something else just because everybody's saying it's hot and good. No, we first figure out what is your risk tolerance. How do we figure that out? You typically answer a little personality investment questionnaire. And based off of your range of scores, it's going to kind of pretty much predict how much risk you're willing to take. And if we're balanced, then this is the asset allocation class that you must follow.
Can I ask a question about risk? So is it typically the younger you are, the more risk you take, and the closer you are to retirement, the more conservative you are?
It just depends. If we're talking about retirement, then most likely it is, because if I'm meeting with a 25-year-old and I'm meeting with a 60-year-old, well, they both have two different time horizons. So the best thing to look at is time horizon, whether I'm investing for in retirement, or maybe I'm saving for a house, for my dream home. Depending upon your time horizon, Adrian, that's what determines your level of risk. For example, if my kids are 7 and 5 years old, I still have at least 12 plus years before I really need access to money for their education, for their higher education. So my time horizon is a little bit longer. Therefore, I can stand to take some risk, versus if my child was 15 years old and closer to needing those dollars, well, my time horizon is now shorter. So for that specific goal, I probably will not want to take a lot of risk because my time horizon is much shorter. So it's not necessarily age, it's time horizon.
And
time
you're talking
horizon,
about, yeah, but you're talking about money that's not in retirement. You're talking about you've got an investment account that's liquid, I'm assuming.
well, whether it's any investment, the number one question that we often have with clients, even some of these questions that we use like in that investor profile, it's all about time horizon. At what, based off of your needing the money. So if I'm investing today and I don't need it for 20 years, whether it's for retirement or something else, then I can stand to be more aggressive, versus if I am investing for the purpose of needing something in the next 5 years, well, maybe I'm not going to be as aggressive with the other strategy that's 10 or 20 plus years from today versus 5 years. So I can invest in a personal account. It doesn't have to be a Roth IRA or traditional IRA or a 401k or a 403b. I can just have an investment account. I can still be invested in underlying investments like stocks or bonds or mutual funds. But because it's a non-qualified account, because it's not a retirement account, I can touch that money before the age of 59 and a half without penalty.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I actually have an investment account. It's not a retirement account. I have both.
Yep.
Both. So.
And both are great, because not only are both are great because of your accessibility to it, but the tax impact of touching the money is different. The tax impact of when you make a withdrawal from your retirement account, typically those dollars you're going to pay ordinary income taxes on it unless it's a Roth account. But if it's a personal account, you don't pay ordinary income taxes on the withdrawal. You pay capital gains tax. Capital gains tax is, let's say if I invested $10,000 and now in 3 years later it's $30,000. Well, I'm not going to pay taxes on $30,000 like I would if I pulled the $30,000 from an IRA or 401k. I'm going to actually only pay capital gains taxes on the 20 grand, not the 30 grand.
Right.
And capital gains tax is much lower. Typically, it's at 20% versus your ordinary income tax bracket, which could be 40% or 94%, depending upon what year we're in, right?
So, yeah, and would you ever recommend someone to buy just a stock? Like they really like this company, and would you ever recommend, or part of that portfolio if you'd want to just hold one company in a stock?
Well, I wouldn't recommend holding that one company in your investment account for the reason that we talked before about asset diversification. Mm-hmm. Adrian, you probably remember Enron.
Yeah.
That was Enron. All of those employees, they had money in their 401k, but guess what? All of it was invested in company stock, one company. So when that one company went down, Their entire life savings went down. None of them had asset diversification. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Yeah, so I
So,
lost everything.
so if you want to invest in individual stocks, then the goal is to follow this. Let me see if I can move. Okay, here it is. Oh, man. Hold up. The goal is to, oh, crap. Bear with me. Let me get back to that page. The goal is to make sure that we have a company stock represented in each of these asset classes. That's what's going to give you the asset diversification and asset allocation. So maybe I have Amazon stock. Maybe I have a mid-level company stock. Maybe I have assets in an individual company that will fall under international developed markets. Maybe I have an individual stock that's listed under commodities. So we don't want to just have one stock, because now we're concentrating all of our hopes and dreams on that one stock.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know what it's after 11, but I wanted to ask, what would be the one piece of advice you would tell students about investing, and what would be the first steps for someone who's working and want to start investing?
Absolutely. So step number one is first, budget. Figure out and understand what your inflow, cash flow looks like, and understand what your expenses are. Secondly, I'd recommend that we save 20%. So that's a great question, because I can go back to that 20-60-20. Remember, 20% is what we're saving, 60% is what we need to live. The other 20% is discretionary: travel, entertainment, weekends, date night, that type of stuff. With the 20% that I'm saving, we want to make sure that at least 10% of that is going towards cash. It is so important to have an emergency fund. That 10% that we're saving of the 20% needs to go to cash, because we don't know if what we're experiencing right now, if and when it's going to happen again. Unemployment is at an all-time high right now. You may have an unexpected medical expense. You know, the individuals that were impacted directly with COVID, the medical expenses associated with that. Anything could happen, so you want to have access to cash. Now, the other 10% of that 20% that I suggested that you save, I'd recommend that here with that 10%, now we start to invest for other goals. Is it a short-term goal? Is it a long-term goal? Maybe of that 10%, I'm putting some of it into my 401k, and maybe I'm putting the other portion of that 10% in an individual account that I do want to have access to before the age of 59 and a half. So you can think of that as your short-term, mid-term, or long-term dollars. Short-term meaning I may need it tonight for any emergency. That's your emergency fund. Mid-term, I don't need it right now, but I'm probably going to need it in the next 10 years. Long-term is I don't need it right now, and in fact, even if everything broke loose, then I still wouldn't go to that money, because that's my long-term dollars. I'll go to my short-term dollars, which is my emergency fund. So that's why it's important to budget once you understand what that budget is, of your income that you bring home, 20% you need to save. Of that 20%, now we want to allocate some of that towards short-term goals, some of it towards mid-term goals, some of it towards long-term goals. So maybe we have a percentage of that 20% going towards savings for cash, for emergencies, for unexpected expenses that everybody has an unexpected expense. Whether it's, hey, I got to replace the tires on my car, or I have to, change daycare providers now that we're in this pandemic and it's costing me a little bit more. So I need to tap into my savings for that. Or any unexpected expense, we want to make sure that we have access to it. Then the other dollars that you're saving or investing, depending upon your time horizon, will determine can we afford to be aggressive with those dollars, or should we look for more of a conservative approach?
Okay, great. That's great advice. Well, thank you so much. I've learned stuff every time I listen to this. I mean, because sometimes it goes over my head. So, it's great to know more and
Absolutely.
more. There's always something to learn. That's for sure.
Well, good. Well, I'm glad I was able to connect with you guys and share a little bit of what I know with you. I think the biggest thing is, budgeting and saving, and considering that savings that you're doing as part of your expense, just like any other bill. You don't want to miss it. You want to pay yourself first.
Yes.